Welcome into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our first guest up for Rivalry Weekend, Matt Josephs from sportsmemo.com at MidMajorMatt on Twitter. Matt, welcome in. How you feeling, man?
Feeling good. Doing the show from my childhood bedroom. So if you notice the little lockers, that's from, when I was a child and we wallpapered the room with them. But yeah, feeling good, Drew.
Good, man. Where's your location actually at?
We are outside of Philadelphia. So I'm at my parents' house. We're here till Friday or so, and we're looking to hopefully dispatch some winners.
Absolutely. Some outside of Philadelphia and coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. Guys, we are hitting every single game on the college football board for this weekend from Thursday through Saturday night, going down in rotation order for the segments. We did split them up, so we put like each handicapper that we have with their more of their strengths in the games we're talking. So Matt's section here is rotation number 165 down to rotation number 196. If you go to the Wager Talk live odds screen, you click on college football. Those are the games we are talking right now. We will also bring in Tony Mejia, Kelly Stewart, and Steve Merrill to talk the rest of the slate of the games. But let's start off here, Matt. 165, 166. 12 noon Eastern start on Saturday. New Mexico State and Liberty, right up your wheelhouse here. We get 51 being the total, minus 24. That's the Liberty Flames at home.
So I really wonder what where their head's at right now. Of course, if you go back a couple of weeks ago, they beat Arkansas and they get that huge win. And of course, there's the natural letdown in the game after because they had Virginia Tech last week and they lost at UConn. And then they come home and it's a huge game because Virginia Tech doesn't come often to Liberty and they lose that game too. And, look, obviously they've got a bowl game. They've got, a bright future. But this quarterback issue that they've had with Salter and Jonathan Bennett and those guys aren't necessarily great. So I don't know where their head's at. The problem is you've got this last game of the season. You've got New Mexico State making this massive travel here to Liberty. They're coming off the loss at Missouri here. I don't know where New Mexico State's head's at either right now. It feels like this would be one of those things where like, oh, yeah, let's just kind of go through the motions here. So this game was kind of an easy pass here because I just don't know where either team's head's at. I expect Liberty to win, but I don't know if they're going to win by margin.
Good start here, Matt, as we talk Central Florida and South Florida up next. The war on I-4 heading to the Sunshine State. 167, 168, 7 o'clock Eastern kick. UCF at USF. We're seeing the UCF Knights off of that surprising loss to Navy. Minus 19-point away favorites, 68 being the total in Raymond James Stadium.
Yeah, one of my wins last week, I had Navy plus the points last week and was pleasantly surprised that they won the game. I didn't expect them to win, but look, this is a huge rivalry game. You know more than I do that this is a huge rivalry game between the two. It was a really odd. Now, look, obviously, I know UCF had quarterback injuries and things like that, but it was a really odd 17-13 game last year. UCF has a small shot to win the AAC title game or make an appearance to the title game if Houston loses, so they're going to be highly motivated. Not to mention it's also a rivalry game. We saw USF's offense play well last week at Tulsa, so I think we're going to get some movement from them as well, even though they're on, I believe, their third or fourth string quarterback. They've had a lot of injuries there. Kind of like the over here, Drew. I think there's going to be a lot of points, and I don't think UCF's one of those teams, Drew, that minds putting up a little bit of extra points on their rival here. I could see like a, 48-24 type of game here. A lot of points being scored by both sides. Obviously, you're closer to this than I am. What do you think about the over here?
Watch the weather a little bit throughout the South this whole weekend, guys. Looks like there's a storm coming through Texas, Mississippi. I'm not sure if it's going to affect Tampa all that much, but I get your sentiment. I mean, yeah, Gus Malzahn given the opportunity to run it up on his opponent, and USF, I mean, they can score and they don't really stop a whole lot of people. I'm not looking to bet this under by any means unless we get like more than 25-mile-an-hour winds projected in Tampa, Matt. But the war on I-4, always a good one, or usually a good one anyway, competitive game. So not 100% enamored with laying near 3 touchdowns with UCF, even though they got a shot to win the AAC in their last year there before heading to the Big 12. We got next game up here, ECU in Temple, not far from where you're talking right now, Matt. 1 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. We're seeing the Pirates minus 10, maybe as high as minus 12, actually. So depending where you're shopping here, guys, 50 being the total, ECU at Temple, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this is another game. Look, it's not going to be much of an atmosphere. It's not going to be well attended. I was actually going to go to the game if I was staying this weekend, but unfortunately, I have to go back to Richmond for their playoff game tomorrow. Excuse me, Saturday. The Owls have kind of shown a little bit of a spark towards the end of the season here, although they kind of got extinguished a little against Cincinnati. We know the one thing that Temple does kind of well is play a little bit of defense here, and I don't know where ECU's head's at. They had the late bye week, and they've lost 2 straight since. They lost 42-3 to Houston in their last game. ECU beat them by a lot of points here, 45-3 last year. A small part of me wants to take Temple if I can get, the 12 here. But then again, I'm also relying on on an offense that's been very hot for a couple weeks and then very cold for the majority of the season. It's probably an easy pass here, but I would kind of lean to Temple a little bit at that number.
We got Kent State and Buffalo, a little action on Saturday, 171, 172, 1 o'clock Eastern kick here. Buffalo, the Bulls, -4 to as high as -4.5. Most of those hooks in Las Vegas. 53 being the total. Interesting handicap here. Kent State, a lot of the supposed bigger bettors in Las Vegas wanting to bet on Kent State. Lost a lot of money. Now it's the last, game of the year here in Buffalo at home, laying 4. Interesting handicap. Anything in the MAC, Matt?
Yeah, and for this one, a little bit of wind. Looks like about 12 to 16 mile per hour winds. Now, of course, I don't know necessarily which way it goes with regards to the stadium and things like that. Obviously, you're getting Buffalo off of the postponement last week. I was very disappointed, Drew. We could have had our true action in 6 feet of snow, and they decided not to play that game. Buffalo's playing for bowl eligibility. I expect a good effort from Buffalo. Now, the one interesting thing that's not really as interesting is that they did reschedule the Akron game for Friday next week. It's not going to matter because of the fact that Ohio won their game, so it's going to be a Toledo-Ohio MAC championship. I kind of like the Buffalo here, Drew. I mean, Kent State, as you said, they're down the stretch. They have not been very good. Their defense is certainly not very good. Buffalo's team total's 29.5. Might be a little bit interested there, although the win kind of scares me off that. But I definitely think the Bulls are going to win this game. They're going to be more motivated as they try and get some bowl eligibility on the line.
Rivalry matchup up next in the Sun Belt. The two teams that made the jump to FBS football together, 6 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. App State and Georgia Southern, 63 being the total. We're seeing a road favorite here in the Mountaineers, laying -4.5 in Statesboro, Georgia, Saturday night, Matt.
Yeah, a little bit of potential for some wind and not wind, a little bit of rain potential here. So certainly you want to check out the forecast because that's going to hurt Georgia Southern here. Georgia Southern is a throw first, throw second, throw third team. Now they've had some injuries when it comes to wide receivers, so it's it's not as potent at attack. We saw last week that they lost to Marshall 23-10. Now of course Marshall has a great defense. A couple things to consider here: Georgia Southern is in bowl eligible with a win. App State still needs a win to become bowl eligible. Now, I know some people are like, well, wait a second. They've got 6 wins. They played 2 FCS opponents. They beat the Citadel and they beat Robert Morris. You only get credit for one of those. So they need this win as well. I lean to App State here. It's one of these things where I do want to watch the weather forecast a little bit closer. If we start seeing more rain in the forecast, that certainly benefits an App State team that runs the ball a whole lot more than Georgia Southern does. So this is going to be a hold here, Drew, as we wait and see if this rain that's developing is going to be there by kickoff. And then we would take App State here, who needs to win to become bowl eligible.
Matt, one that I thought would have been a little bit more competitively priced here, the Chanticleers versus the Dukes. That's Coastal Carolina versus James Madison, kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern. We're seeing JMU -14-point home favorites, 54 being the total.
So I'll talk a little bit about this, but my second 5-unit play of the season is in this game. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I'll say this. I mean, this would not be the line if Grayson McCall was playing. Obviously, no Grayson McCall once again. And even if he was healthy, I don't know if he's going to play. Coastal Carolina has the Eastern Division or whatever they call it. They have their division locked up, so it doesn't matter. Now, the funny thing here is, Drew, James Madison with a win in this game, which they presumably would get, would be the division champs. But because they made the jump from FCS to FBS, The conference will not recognize it. They will not make a bowl game. They will not make the Sun Belt Championship game. So for JMU, this is their Super Bowl. And there has been talk that they will celebrate this thing like they've won the division, like they've won everything. And so I think there's going to be some high motivation here from the Dukes for a noon game against Coastal Carolina. They don't care if Grayson McCall is playing or not. They'll be highly motivated for this one.
Matt, isn't that one of the dumbest rules in college football?
Yeah, and it would have been even worse, Drew, that JMU would have had a 2-year wait for a bowl game, but because the Sun Belt gave them a full conference schedule, it's only 1 year. So next year, with presumably just as good of a team, JMU will be a bowl eligible. And look, I think you can make a case, Drew, if it wasn't enough bowl eligible teams this year. I think as of now, we're on pace for enough bowl eligible teams, but JMU is one of the best group of 5 teams in the country. Like, they should be playing in the postseason. And I wish there was a bowl game that would say, screw you, NCAA, you guys are going to play with us.
I know. I remember this happened to Georgia Southern when they made the jump up and they didn't go to a bowl game. And I think they were like undefeated in the Sun Belt, something like that. But it's just one of those rules. It's like, why does it even exist? You know what I mean? That transitionary, like 1 year or 2 years in some cases, making the jump from FCS to FBS. You heard Matt there talk about his 5% play up at sportsmemo.com. Guys, he's the #1 college football handicapper at SportsMemo. So the most profitable, also the most profitable in the last 3 seasons. He's 89-54 so far in college football and profitable in each of the last 3 seasons. So go check him out. sportsmemo.com. You can also find him on Twitter at MidMajorMatt. Matt, moving down the list here, we got 177, 178, Georgia State at Marshall. Thundering Herd, -6-point home favorites, 45 being the total.
Yeah, what a disappointing season for Georgia State this year. I thought that, a lot of people thought that they were going to be one of those teams that kind of has a chance to win the Sun Belt. And they had that really tough early part of their schedule. They've had some tough losses this year. Obviously, they were ahead at James Madison. They were up pretty big at James Madison. Then the Dukes came all the way back. I'm not sure where Georgia State's head's at right now. Obviously, there's no bowl game in their future. Marshall's got an amazing defense. Last I looked, Georgia State's team total was 19.5. I'd look at the under. As always, when it comes to team totals here, I would say this. You either take the under at 19.5 or you wait and see if you can get the 20.5, which is going to be the more even number, which is what, the books are trying to prevent. If they get enough money on the over, they'll push it to 20.5. So I like the Georgia State team total under. Marshall's defense just matches up really well here. They've got a bowl game in their future. I like this Thundering Herd defense. So I would take the Georgia State team total under here.
Heading to Boca Raton, Florida. Up next, Western Kentucky at FAU. Kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern kick. -7 in the hook. That's the Hilltoppers as the road favorite. 61 being the total. Matt, I've had the pleasure to watch each of these two teams live, actually. I watched Western Kentucky versus Auburn in Jordan here this past Saturday. And I've actually seen 2 of FAU games in this stadium. I don't know, man. 7 in the hook? I kind of think like FAU's the side here. Interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, so Western Kentucky is into the Conference USA Championship with a win and a Rice win over North Texas. Now, we're going to get into that game a little bit later. I don't think Rice is going to beat North Texas, so I think what Western Kentucky's doing won't matter in this game. Obviously, Western Kentucky beat them up by a lot last year. Florida Atlantic is playing for bowl eligibility, although they just didn't play very well against Middle Tennessee. You have 49 points to Middle Tennessee. That's a little bit much here. I kind of do agree with you. I think Florida Atlantic might be the side a little bit here. Now, obviously, and I don't have my kickoff times in front of me, Drew. What time's the kickoff for the Rice-North Texas game? Are they playing simultaneously? Does Western Kentucky play first? Because I think that's a factor in this game in terms of how much they're going to try.
2 o'clock Eastern, so 2 hours later.
So 2 hours later, so they won't know. So Western Kentucky's going to try and win this game, of course, as they always would. But I just think that'll be rather interesting towards the end if they get extra motivation if somehow Rice is up over North Texas. But I do agree. I kind of lean Florida Atlantic here. Bowl eligibility on the line, a modestly decent, okay defense. And, it looks like a little bit of potential for some wins, which I think would not help Western Kentucky here. So small lean to Florida Atlantic here.
Man, I got a handicapping question for you. Does this weekend change anything for you and how you handicap games? You brought up bowl eligibility a couple times now, and I believe there's a bunch of teams with 5 wins playing for bowl eligibility. I think more than most years this year. How much does that factor into your handicap?
Well, I think it does, but as we all know, Drew, it also factors into the odds maker. So some of these lines are a little bit higher than they should be because the odds makers know that's bowl eligibility for some of these schools, Drew, in the Sun Belt, the MAC, Conference USA. Bowl eligibility means a lot to these kids. So it is something I look at. If there's two teams playing each other that have nothing on the line, then I'm not gonna, I'm probably gonna most likely skip it. Although, we have seen some games between two non-bowl eligible teams, like that Tulsa South Florida game was a lot of fun, a lot of offense, no defense. So for the most part, I'm going to skip non-bowl eligibility games, but it is certainly a factor for this weekend.
Next game up, ODU and USA, also 12 noon Eastern. That's Old Dominion at South Alabama. We're seeing South Alabama minus 15 to as high as minus 16-point home favorites, 48 being the total in Mobile, Alabama.
South Alabama needs a win and a Troy loss, and they get into the title game. They would play Coastal Carolina. South Alabama's got an awesome defense. ODU's kind of mailed things in a little bit last week. I won on the ODU team total under because they don't have Zach Kuntz, their tight end. They don't have Allie Jennings, one of the best wide receivers in the country. Hayden Wolf is going to be under pressure here. I was a little nervous because App State gave a couple late touchdowns to make that thing at least interesting. We're getting the same 16.5 number here for Old Dominion. I'm going back to the well once again, Drew. I'm going to take the under for Old Dominion. Another legit defense here in South Alabama. South Alabama is motivated to win this game, and I just think the Monarchs are going to kind of whimper out the rest of the season. So give me under 16.5 points for ODU this weekend.
All right, a little team total under Akron, the Zips at Northern Illinois for some more action here. 183, 184, the rotation number, 130 Eastern kick, 53 being the total. We're seeing the Huskies minus 10.5-point home favorites against the Zips.
Yeah, and here's the thing I don't know how to guess, Drew. Akron hasn't played in 2 weeks. They have not played since November 8th. So, and it's a team that obviously has they have no bowl eligibility. They have no future, essentially. They have 1 win on the season. So I don't know, Drew, with 2 weeks off, does that refresh them? Do they want to play this game? Do they not want to play this game? And remember now, they have to play the Buffalo game as well because they just rescheduled that game. So I don't know where Akron's final 2 games are going to be on the road here. Northern Illinois coming off the tough loss to Miami, Ohio in last week. Northern Illinois is the better team. I don't like the Cremascoli kid, who is their quarterback. He got very lucky last week against Miami, Ohio, had a bunch of open passes and things like that. It's 2 ugly teams here, Drew. If you had to guess, how do you think motivation-wise, after 2 weeks off, Akron looks at this game? Are they ready to end the season, or are they ready to play spoiler here?
I mean, it's one of the two. I don't see it in the middle. I would venture to go on the side of they're ready to play and come out, just the positivity in it. But at the same time, it could be one of those, let go of the ropes. And Matt, I actually missed that. They did reschedule the Buffalo-Akron game. So what are they going to do with the MAC championship game?
Well, Ohio won. Ohio won. I think that's one of the reasons why they're rescheduling the game is because it doesn't matter. But obviously that you would think that was one reason not to reschedule it. But it is Ohio and Toledo in the MAC championship game. So we'll say motivation will be certainly key in that game. I don't know how to kind of handicap both sides of that thing.
We got Minnesota and Wisconsin up next. 36 being the total here, Matt. -3, that's the Badgers at home. And Wisconsin and Minnesota, what is this for the old Oaken Bucket? It's something. I know that. It's got a name.
They love their trophies. I think it's funny. The Big Ten has like the most random trophies for everything. It's just funny because they're like, oh, we're fighting for a tin soldier. We're fighting for one of those little soldiers that you go and you purchase, or we're playing for the old Hess truck from the gas station. It's just I feel like every game in this conference is for something. Good God. If you're betting this game, you're a sicko. I mean, if you look at last week, Minnesota lost 13-10. I had the team total under for Minnesota. That hit. And then Wisconsin beat Nebraska 15-14. So, I mean, this is so tough. The team totals for this game, Drew, 19.5 for Wisconsin, 16.5 for Minnesota. I was not impressed, but I was semi-pleased with what I saw from the freshman kid from Minnesota at quarterback. He replaced Tanner Morgan. I don't know what the quarterback race will be next year for Tanner Morgan's 27th season in college football. If they're going to let this kid start, I know he's not coming back next year. I'm making a joke. You got to pass on this one. It's going to be cold. It's going to be miserable. It's two teams really not playing for anything. There's probably not going to be a lot of points, as you just said. So, yeah, you got to pass this one.
It's I looked it up here. It isn't the Oaken Bucket, Matt. It is Paul Bunyan's axe.
Okay.
Yeah. Next game up, the game, Michigan and Ohio State, two playoff teams if the season were to end today, 187, 188. Also kicking us off on Saturday, 56 being the total, -7 in the hook. There is a couple -8s out there. That's the Buckeyes and the Horseshoe.
And obviously for this game, you need to know, it's funny because last week, both of these teams had the similar letdowns in terms of, in terms of how they played. The Illinois game, they very easily could have lost. And it was a really stupid end for Michigan. How they left Illinois anytime to get the ball back. That third down play, they probably should have waited as long as possible. And then, at fourth down, kicked the field goal with like 8 or 7 seconds left, but they didn't. Illinois didn't win. It didn't matter. The thing for Michigan here, Drew, is if Blake Corum, who has said he'll be back, which of course you're going to say that, and then Donovan Edwards is also limited. And if Michigan doesn't have their top 2 running backs, their passing attack is okay. I don't like, J.J. McCarthy to try and win games for them. You've got an Ohio State team that's defense is a little lax. They gave up 30 points last week to Maryland. I'll pardon them a little bit for that because they probably weren't focused for that game. It'll be interesting to see who else is available for Ohio State, Drew. So this is one of those things where I don't think we're going to get injury clarity before kickoff. It's going to be one of those things where, like, at 10 a.m., some guy comes out and says, Blake Corum's not playing, Donovan Edwards is playing, whatever. But, like, to me, if Michigan's going to be without their top 2 running backs in this one, I kind of lean to the home team in this.
Like it, Matt. Staying in the Big Ten, another trophy game as we got Illinois and Northwestern playing for the Land of Lincoln trophy. Illinois at Northwestern, 3:30 Eastern. The Illini -14 in the hook as the road favorites, 38 being the total here, Matt.
Well, I want to address this for 1 second. So I got a comment from one of the people who follow the show that they don't love the fact that I kind of throw out double-digit favorites on the road. I mean, it's my style. It's whatever style. Everybody has their own thing. Now, I appreciate the person for watching, but it's just one of those things. Like, I'm not going to take Illinois here. Back doors are open frequently on the road. Plus, Illinois came off a really tough loss at Michigan. And, obviously they're better than Northwestern, but this is Northwestern's final game. They're home. I'm guessing there'll probably be a lot more Illinois fans there. Northwestern's offense is hideous. Their team total's 11.5. But, like, if I want to throw out double-digit favorites on the road as things I don't handicap or don't want to play, like, that's my personal style. I just thought that was interesting. Someone pointed that out, Drew. I mean, it could sound like an Illinois home game here, but where's the Illini's head after such a tough loss to Michigan? We know that they've had such a really good season. If the defense shows up, Northwestern may not score. Remember, last week we saw the Northwestern third-string quarterback in this game. So there's not a lot of reasons to play Northwestern, but I'm certainly not playing Illinois after what happened last week.
Heading to the Conference of Champions up next, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, 191, 192, Utah at Colorado. Utes -29.5, 52 being the total in Boulder.
So I think last week a lot of people liked Colorado, or some people liked Colorado, because they thought, okay, Washington coming off the huge upset. In between that and the Apple Cup, they'd probably let down. Colorado will give a decent effort. Of course, Washington won the game 54-7. Colorado is really bad. Really bad. And Utah coming off the loss at Oregon, like, that hurt their chances for the Pac-12. Now, if Utah wins and Oregon loses and Washington wins and UCLA wins, then Utah gets in. Chances of that happening, probably not very good. Once again, Drew, I'm not guessing motivation here. Utah's going to win this game, but are they going to win it by margin? Are they going to win it by 4 touchdowns? The one thing I might be interested in, and it's not going to be out yet, it might be out game day, is what's Utah's team total? Colorado's defense is terrible. Even a half-motivated Utah could probably put up 40 points on Colorado. If the one thing I would consider here is maybe the over, with Utah doing most of the work. Problem is, if Colorado doesn't give you anything, Can they carry the whole total themselves? I'm not sure. That's my one worry here. But the only thing I'd kind of look at is here the Utah team total over when it comes out, or the game over, because I think Utah's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Matt, next game up, heading to a battle, in-state battle of Texas, Rice and North Texas. We previously mentioned it here. Important in Conference USA. 59.5 being the total. This is one of those games that got smashed to the under by 4 points here from the opener due to a little bit of wind projected in the Lone Star State. -2 touchdowns. That's the mean green. -14 pretty much across the board here, Matt.
Yeah, I find that interesting that this is happening because, North Texas would love to run it. They're a run-based team. Rice's offense is, I don't even know what you could say about Rice's offense. I'm kind of looking at the precipitation here. I mean, the morning's going to be miserable. The wind, it's funny because the rain will be there in the morning, and then the wind will be there in the afternoon and the night. So it all depends on how you kind of handicap rain and wind. But like North Texas runs the ball a lot, so I don't think it would matter for them. Win and they're in the conference championship game. Rice is into a bowl game with a victory here, although I thought I saw one projection that had them get a bowl even with 5 wins. I think North Texas wins this game. Rice is all over the place. They're coming off a tough loss at UTSA. That shows me they're not ready for the next step up. Of course, with wind in the forecast, maybe there becomes a little bit more value closer to kickoff on North Texas, but I like North Texas to win this game.
We got BYU and Stanford up next. We are seeing the Cougars of BYU -6.5 point road favorites, 57.5 being the total on the farm.
BYU had that late bye week. Their first bye week came before last week's game. They felt really refreshed. Of course, it was a slow start. Utah Tech was matching them point for point, and then BYU pulled away 52-26 here. And then you got Stanford coming off the loss at Cal. BYU's a little bit healthier from what they are, and I think they're still feeling a little refreshed. Although Stanford, I haven't seen a lot of Stanford this year, Drew. I'm gonna throw this to you if you have any thoughts here, because I think BYU is a little fresher than Stanford, obviously with the late bye week, but they are traveling on the road to a Pac-12 school.
Yeah, I'd look at BYU, but I got to kind of plead the fifth as well. I lost the game early on with Stanford against USC and just kind of wrote them off. So I haven't really bet much of their games. Don't know too much about them either. But if you made me bet it, I'd lay the 6.5 with BYU. Guys, we got one game left. He's Matt Josephs at MidMajorMatt. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. Sports Memo's #1 college football handicapper, 89-54 on the year. Each of the last 3 years in the profits, most profitable college football handicapper this year and the last 3 years combined. Obviously knows his college football, always doing a great job here on the Every Game on the Board podcast. We'll have him back for bowl season, but guys, this is the last Every Game on the Board segment for the regular season for Matt. We got 3 left here to finish it off and 1 game left for Matt. Hitting it now, battle for the Fremont Cannon, coming to us from Las Vegas, Nevada, 6 o'clock Eastern here. Nevada at UNLV, -12.5. That's the Rebels in Allegiant Stadium, 49 being the total, Matt.
Obviously I think, and I don't know about you, I think UNLV's playing for Arroyo's job on Saturday. I think if they lose this game, I think Arroyo's going to go. Now, I don't know as much. You were obviously closer in Vegas. You've seen more UNLV football than I have. But it feels like reading some of the stories and things, it looks like they're playing for his job. I think that's a great motivation here. Obviously, look, we talked about it last week, and I thought it was funny. Somebody crushed my discussion on the Hawaii UNLV game, and I got it right because I said I leaned to UNLV on the island here. Excuse me, I leaned to Hawaii on the island. And, of course, they won the game outright. I just think that was a pleasure trip for UNLV. Like, I just feel like it was one of those things where, hey, we're going to Hawaii in late November. Like, we're going to have some fun. Of course, we're going to play some football, but we're going to soak this thing up. And it kind of showed a little bit on the field. Nevada's terrible. I mean, let's be honest. This is not a good football team. They've struggled all year. That was one of my cashes on my team totals. Win totals. I had the under for Nevada, and I was sweating a little bit. I think they won their first 2 or 3 games, and then they struggled the rest of the year once they started playing teams that are actually pretty good. I think UNLV can name their score here. I think the over might be a modest look, although UNLV's team total's 30.5. I think they have some fun with their rival here, Drew. I could see them putting up 31, 35 points here. I think UNLV's team total over 30.5. Doug Brumfield's playing in this game, right, Drew? He did not get hurt in the Hawaii game, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so as long as everybody's healthy, Aiden Robbins, those wide receivers, I think that UNLV is the side here in terms of I'm looking at their team total over here. I think they have some fun with their rival to kind of close things out for the regular season.
Matt, do you have a most confident play of the section for the listeners?
I will say, and I'll go back to it once again because it won last week. ODU under 16.5 points against South Alabama. The Jaguars have to win to get a shot at the Sun Belt Championship game. Their defense is really good. ODU's limping down the stretch. Another road game after playing at App State. So give me ODU under 16.5 points for their team total.
Team total under, winner Matt, you're well over 500. I don't have your record for most confident plays in each segment, but guys, he's been killing it. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Matt. Any final thoughts here before we shut it down?
Yeah, just it's been a great college football season. Appreciate everybody who's watching. Of course, I do have the 5-unit play, the second one of the season, up on the website, sportsmemo.com. It was a game that we talked about, but I didn't give away what it was. So certainly go check that out, sportsmemo.com. And thanks to everybody. And thanks to you, Drew, for hosting these.
All right, Matt. Have a good Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving out there. And we'll be back at 3:30 with Steve Merrill for the next section of every game on the board. Thanks for tuning in. Please smash that like button. Feel